Thanks for joining us today for this interview with Dr. Eileen O'Brien, Program Director of UMBC's Graduate Certificate Program in College Teaching and Learning Science. She spoke with us about the program, its course curriculum, how the program will address industry needs, who can benefit from it, and how it will give professionals a competitive edge. She also shared a glimpse into her personal journey to where she is today. My name is Denise Cardona from UMBC's Division of Professional Studies, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with Dr. O'Brien today. Without further ado, let's hear from her. Dr. O'Brien, what is the real value of a graduate certificate in college teaching and learning science?
It's actually designed for people who are either in graduate school in a discipline where they're becoming experts, say in chemistry or biology or English, and they are going for their PhD, doing a dissertation, and really focusing in on research. However, when they graduate, they're going to have to teach in the universities, or they want to teach in a university. And they're not really prepared for that type of a role. So in this program, it would take individuals who are either in the process of getting their higher degree, or who have completed their master's and are thinking about teaching, particularly college populations, whether it's in a community college, four-year university, so that they are well acquainted with this population that we have in college now, which is extremely different from what it was years ago. I think one of the biggest shocks you hear from people in industry who transition to teaching in college is, I thought I could be an adjunct, and I came in to teach the course, and it was complex. It was difficult for me to understand the nature of the student. So we're looking at delivering 5 courses that would transition somebody who is either in industry or business who wants to come in and do adjunct work, or transition to full-time teaching in the colleges, to be prepared for this new population of college learners.
Can you talk about the industry needs and how the program will address them?
I think if employers were looking at bringing in an adjunct or a full-time person to higher education, they would ask what preparation you've had in teaching and learning. And today's student, as I said before, is quite different. They're an audience that is looking for someone who can facilitate their learning, as opposed to the age on the stage kind of an approach. We're now looking at teaching as being more facilitative, and that requires different skills. You can be expert in your discipline, but now when you're faced with helping individuals learn something, that's a different ballgame. You need a different set of strategies, a different set of skills and abilities. This is really an immersion into facing the learner who today is of a different age. Oftentimes our students are older. They're oftentimes coming with the notion that they are consumers, and this is a purchased item they've got here, this education. How are you going to take me to the next level and facilitate my learning? Which is very different from the past.
What makes UMBC's Graduate Certificate Program in College Teaching and Learning Science stand apart from similar programs at other institutions?
I think UMBC is in a unique position because we've been at the forefront of innovation in teaching. I think you see that across all the disciplines. We've worked in course redesign. We've worked in setting up environments that allow for innovative pedagogy, where you walk into a classroom, there's no longer a stage and a podium, but rather there are round tables and students interacting, coming in and having prepared for class, and now the instructor is there and this faculty person says, okay guys, now I got to engage you. I've got to make all this relevant to you, and you've got to apply what you've read. It's no longer memorization and multiple choice questions. You're here to work in a group and now demonstrate your knowledge. So I think in that way, UMBC has really been ahead of the pack on this. I think if you'll notice just the number of classrooms we have here that have now transitioned to more active learning, it's fairly phenomenal in this short period of time.
What has been the reaction of new faculty to this new active learning shift?
I always love when we have a candidate come in for a faculty position, and we did yesterday, and I took her to one of the rooms and she says, "Oh my gosh, how do you lecture here?" And I said, "Well, that's it. We don't lecture per se. Yes, there's information one imparts, but it's much more about getting the student to be an active learner in the situation and to be totally engaged in what they're doing, so they leave with a product." I think in the past you left with a grade. I want to leave them with a change in their behavior and how they're going to apply some of the skills that they're learning.
In your opinion, Dr. O'Brien, who could benefit from this program?
Someone who could benefit by the program would be someone who is in industry, who might be in education at the secondary level, someone in business who is saying, I think I could really engage students and really influence the next generation of workers. So I want to go in and be an adjunct, or I want to transition now from this research role I've had for years to working with individuals in the classroom in higher ed. I think that's a great population to tap into for this type of a program. I think it's very relevant to them. I also think for individuals in graduate school who are learning their discipline, who are becoming expert researchers, who will be leaving with probably proposals that go to NIH for funding, and then they're faced with a classroom and designing a course, and all of a sudden it's a different set of skills that they never really were exposed to in their education. So this certificate, I think, takes their expert knowledge and helps them to then translate that to the classroom and to students who are coming to learn.
I think a lot of people are always curious about how a program is created. So could you speak about how this program was created in terms of ensuring that UMBC is meeting the industry needs and preparing its graduates for success?
Yeah, the 5 courses were actually designed after we had done a focus group there were college administrators, faculty in higher ed, individuals in faculty development and centers for teaching and learning, and graduate students themselves who were very interested in seeking jobs in the next year or two and saying, what skills do I need, and realizing they hadn't had exposure to education. So we did those several focus groups, and they actually gave us some very sage advice with regard to what today's faculty need to look like, what skills they need to have, what challenges are out there. So they talked to us about critical race theory, how diverse the population is, how you have to be sensitive to different ways of learning, to the different needs of the population. College learners today are stressed. They're managing their lives, their home, their work, their education, and everything's a priority, right? So you're dealing with this very stressed group. A lot of mental health issues that come to the forefront, and we need to be able to address those and help people work through them so that they can meet their goals in education. So I think looking at individuals who want to transition to this type of a role, whether it's in business, like secondary education, industry, or those who are already getting their graduate degree but not necessarily getting the exposure to teaching.
Can you talk about the course curriculum and what students might expect to learn in this program?
There are 5 courses. The first one really looks at the adult learner, what we call the college learner today, and adult oftentimes is a misnomer. College learners look different, of all ages, of all ethnicities, races, etc. So we're looking in that first course of how one approaches the learning situation, understanding the learning science, that one approach doesn't meet everyone's needs. We're also looking at quality matters in this first course so that you, as a student, are certified in the Quality Matters rubric, which prepares you to design courses that are very clear to the learner exactly what they need to do to be successful. Quality Matters is a masterful program. It is located in the state of Maryland, and once one has completed that certificate, you have all the skills and the knowledge to build a course that is going to identify objectives, learning objectives, outcomes, both at, I think, the course level, at the program level, and the university level. It really kind of drives home that as educators, we're responsible for the student as a product, to be able to go out and get that job, to be a good teacher, and to fulfill their life goals, right? So that first course really looks at the adult, or I should say the college learner, and what we understand from science about learning. The second course looks at best practices. So this is the classroom pedagogy or the technological skills and abilities one needs to reach students online or in a hybrid format. So much today is done with technology and learning. So learning analytics would be part of this course. And getting comfortable with the different software, the learning platforms that we have, and how to use the data you get from these platforms to inform your teaching. The third course looks primarily at evaluation. What is the best way to evaluate a learner? How do you know that they've learned? You know, you could say they've memorized something, but that's not the outcome you're looking for. So that is all about testing and measurement and looking at outcomes at all levels of teaching, you know, from the course to the program to the university, competencies you want for all your graduates. The fourth course is your practicum, and this one uses the first three courses as foundation to what you are now going to do in a classroom. It comes along with a seminar that helps people focus on what they're doing in the classroom. Students will need to find placements, or we will help them identify a good placement and help that negotiation. But really, this gives them the opportunity to prepare a video package that shows a clip and an example of how they are drawing on all the knowledge from the first three courses and actually using that in the classroom with students. The seminar helps them build a teaching portfolio, of which that video would be one of the most important components. So hopefully we are taking an individual through about a year, maybe some people a year and a half, depending on accessibility to the practicum, to the clinical, I say clinical, but educational site. Could be a community college classroom, it could be a college classroom. But it's going to give us a visual, an observational piece of information that demonstrates this person has kind of taken the first three courses, assimilated all that knowledge, and is able to deliver it and practice as a good teacher, someone who can facilitate learning.
A lot of people who are listening to this probably have a very similar question running through their brains right now. And that is, how will this program give people a competitive edge?
I think that colleges are becoming more aware that the faculty need to be prepared to reach students. So I think it distinguishes you as an applicant for an adjunct or a faculty position to say that you've had this type of preparation, that it's that boots on the ground experience that you've had, as opposed to just saying I've got this theoretical approach from my graduate program, or I've taught in the business world so I know how to reach college-age students. It's not that easy. I think this gives you an advantage. It shows that you've looked at the recent literature, the current notions around learning, and that you're able to apply them. So I think you come in with a competitive edge if you've got that certificate.
Can you share with us a little bit about the path that you took to land here at UMBC?
I entered education through the nursing education portal, actually, because that was my background. So I spent a number of years teaching nursing. And as I was doing that, I was going back for my PhD in psychology. So I had been introduced very early on in the health sciences to virtual labs, virtual patients, what the healthcare field was beginning to look at given the challenges in training, healthcare professionals. So when I got my PhD in psychology, I came back into a fellowship with the federal government, and I worked in training and technical assistance. And I was working with industry and individuals outside of academia, and I realized that I had a framework around teaching that was purely academic. We use large words. We can't say things in 2 sentences. It's like 14 paragraphs, and it's a great dissertation, but I could have probably said that in about 5 sentences, succinct, clear. And that's what I needed in the business world during my fellowship. And when I came out, I thought, I want to try to translate some of this back into academia. And I had finished my PhD in psychology. I love the blending of psychology and education. I think that's where learning sits for individuals. So I came back to UMBC and I was given a class to teach with 200 students. And everyone said, it's just a straight lecture. And I said, for an hour and 45 minutes twice a week, really? And I thought, oh, well, the students are going to fall asleep. I'm going to fall asleep. This is pretty boring. And the students aren't engaged. They're just listening to this monotone yammer, yammer, yammer. And nobody's happy to be here. No one is getting it. They're not excited about the content. So I joined in with a group from the University System of Maryland that was getting funding through the chancellor, who had gotten a Carnegie Award for innovation in teaching. And I went through the course redesign system with people from other institutions in the system to create a new way of reaching many new learners. And I redesigned that one course on campus. This was in 2007. And we followed it through 2014. What we were seeing was this course that I initially came to teach had as high as a 33% failure rate. And students hated the course. It was considered the behemoth. Nobody wanted it. They avoided it. So we turned it on its head, made it more interactive, added online interactivities, gave students digital textbooks to read. And when they came to class, it was more of a flipped classroom. I could sit up here and just read the textbook to you, but let's talk about what you learned about behaviorism. How do you translate what you read about behaviorism in psychology to the real world? Let's talk about traffic jams. Let's talk about how we try to get people into either Baltimore City or DC for their workplace on time. What happens with traffic? Why do we have traffic jams? How can you use behaviorism to move traffic more efficiently? And all of a sudden the students are saying, oh, is that why we have Easy Pass? Oh, yeah, that's a nice strategy. Now back up and tell me how that strategy is reflected in psychology. And what have we taught individuals? What have they learned works best? Oh, so if you have this little Easy Pass, you sort of don't have to stop through these gates. So that eliminates a whole lot of traffic behind here. Oh, that was psychology. And you say, yeah, it's every day in front of you. And that's just one example. That's how I got here. It was an exciting way to take a lot of what I had done earlier in my career in teaching, apply it to psychology, and bring in this whole new approach to engaging students, making them active learners, and facilitating their learning. which was a lot of fun. And all of a sudden I found like an hour and 45 was too long. We can cut it back to an hour and 15. They're doing some time online. They're learning on their own, at their own pace, coming back, and now they're able to contribute to discussion. Imagine that, you know? And I've got people not sleeping. Now, there's still going to be some folks who are dozers because they'd stayed up all night. But for the most part, I get very interactive students who are, you know, saying, this was really interesting when they leave. And I think, wow, that's the measure. That's my outcome today. It's not that they were able to tell me who Erik Erikson was. It's that they're able to say, this was really clear to me. Now I understand why people behave this way. So for me, that was like the gem, you know.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I wish I had more professors like you when I was studying back in the day.
You know, I think you have to love teaching and love the relationship. I always say it's about the relationship. That's what learning is. It's about relationships with all the students. And unless you understand who that audience is, you're not going to engage them. You're not going to meet them where they are. So part of it is understanding the population that's out there and really beginning to explore what kind of a relationship is going to work for each individual student. I mean, there are some students who are very afraid of online work. That is a population out there. And we still need to be able to meet their needs. And there are ways around that. If you have difficulty with online engagement, then we'll work with somebody who will sit with you and show you how this is done. Because I find that once you've had that degree of comfort with it, it then becomes an okay thing to try, you know. Today's technology, you've got to be ready for it. You have to be able to address your fears with it and to be able to work through that in order to, you know, meet the needs of our workforce.
What excites you most about this field?
You know, and I say this to my class in psychology, what excites me most is there could be a Steve Jobs in this audience. And, you know, we don't know that. I need to tap into creativity and allow you to be creative. You know, everyone talks about thinking out of the box, but I really want you to stretch here and stretch your mind as to maybe how to do things differently. This is how innovation comes about. The workforce doesn't want to hire people who don't think. They want critical thinkers. They want that creativity there. I mean, you think about the people who came before us, who've had these great innovations, wonderful work done with Microsoft and what they've done with Apple and the Bill Gates of the world. My goodness, they could be sitting in this classroom. And you want to open up some doors and some windows and give them a peek at potential. And that to me excites me. I think, you know, there could be somebody in here who's going to be so creative that they fix one of the biggest problems we face. I think that's what's exciting about education, and particularly higher ed, because they're ready for it. That prefrontal cortex is all set and developed, hopefully. And if not, let's exercise those neurons and see what fires, you know? It's an exciting, you know, possibility.
I always love to end an interview on this question. If you could tell your younger self something, what would that be?
Oh my goodness, my younger self. This is a hard one. I guess because I went through so many different routes. I'd probably say I wouldn't change it. I would try to experiment in many disciplines. Learn more about communication, cross-disciplinary work. I think building relationships in education is important. I would say to understand that the impact that you have on individuals goes far beyond the classroom. I think when I look at the impact of research on policy, I think, well, research on policy, but if you look at the academic mission of the university, I think the impact is even more far-reaching because you're hitting so many individuals out there who have great potential. My younger self, I'd say, get started and keep going with it now, get out and try all the new innovative ways of doing things, get into technology. And I probably would have started into technology a lot sooner. It was only until it actually made that connection with education that I got into it. I think it comes naturally to most of our students, and we have to keep that frame of academia away from the technology, because sometimes that sort of makes them sit up and say, oh, this is school, I'm not going to do this. No, this is exciting. I think translating the excitement of learning and being that lifelong learner is so important. We never stop learning. My students teach me every day, seriously.
Thanks again for joining us for this interview with Dr. Eileen O'Brien. If you'd like to learn more about UMBC's Graduate Certificate in College Teaching and Learning Science, please visit collegeteaching.umbc.edu.